Hi, I'm Kelly with citruscycles.ca. I'm here with the Supercharger GX. It's made in Germany by Riesenmüller. It's a beautiful Bosch-powered e-bike with dual integrated power tube batteries. It's available in the stunning electric blue that you see here and also in silver. It's available in 3 frame sizes, and you can get it with 3 different drivetrain options. This one is the GX Rohloff with the Rohloff speed hub and a Gates carbon belt. You can also get it as the GH New Vinci with the New Vinci continuously variable transmission and a traditional touring with a SLX 11-speed cassette chain and derailleur. For the detailed specs on the bike, current pricing, to schedule an appointment to come try it here in beautiful Ladysmith on Vancouver Island, or to take advantage of our Try at Home program, you can visit our website at citruscycles.ca. There you'll find our contact information, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. You can call or email and reach out to us on Facebook, and happy to answer questions for you. So the Supercharger I have here is the Supercharger GX Rohloff. I call it a grand expedition bike, but you can really use it for anything. Although you may start with an e-bike for commuting or running errands, this bike is the one that's going to inspire you to seek out longer rides and to go exploring. You'll be able to ride it all day because you've got those dual integrated batteries. We actually have a power tube battery up here and one down here as well. That's optional, of course, but I definitely recommend it. That's going to allow you to ride all day, and you'll do so in comfort. We've got a Thudbuster suspension seat post on there. We've got some really comfy ergon grips with bar ends to give you different riding positions. We have a suspension fork. It's an air fork that's going to, again, help you to stay comfortable and safe while you're riding. You can explore new trails and new paths with some off-road capability. We've got the Schwalbe Rock Razor tires here that are great for all terrain. And of course the Bosch CX drive gives you plenty of torque to climb up any hill. With the integrated rear and front rack, you can bring all of your gear for that grand expedition, or for your day at the office, or for your groceries that you'll pick up on the way home. It even comes with this very cool integrated water bottle with an integrated holder to keep you hydrated, and an Avis folding lock to keep the bike safe. I'm going to take you through all the details of the bike, but like I said, the detailed specs can be found on our website at citruscycles.ca. So let's start by talking about really the standout feature of this bike. Why it's so beautiful is we're using the new Bosch power tube integrated batteries. So I love the way the Riesenmüller has approached this battery. They've got this kind of rubberized cover here for both the top and the bottom battery, and you just flip that up, and now you can see there is the Bosch power tube battery. This is significant because this is a Bosch specific battery. It's not something that Riesenmüller's designed, and that means that any Bosch power tube battery will work on this bike. So we know that well into the future you'll be able to get spare batteries from Bosch, and you'll be able to easily swap them out. It's not bike specific. You're not relying on Riesenmüller to have an inventory of spare batteries for the future. You know that Bosch has got you covered with that. So that's one of the nice things about going with the Bosch system, is that they do have a multi-year parts commitment. And you know, when they came out with the new 500 watt-hour batteries, they made them backwards compatible with the 400. Although this is a new format, this is the power tube, so it's designed to go inside the frame. But I love the way that Riesenmüller's handled the integration, because a lot of companies are putting an aluminum plate on the battery itself to help it blend into the bike. Of course, the challenge with that is then you're having to, if you're wanting to bring a spare battery along or need to upgrade in the future, you're having to take that plate off and put it on, and it just becomes a little bit more difficult. With this, it's just a true straight up power tube battery, and this really cool cover here that helps it blend into the frame and makes it super easy to get the battery on and off. I didn't bring the key with me, so I'm going to cut to a video in a few moments where I'm going to show you how this is a 2-step process for removing the battery. I'll try to mention at that point that this is a specific carrying handle that Riesenmüller has added, which is nice because the power tube doesn't have a carrying handle, unlike the power pack, so they've added that in as well. But otherwise, it uses the same charger and the same connector port as the previous the power pack, which is still available. So it's, again, nice that Bosch really handles that compatibility well. And you don't have to ride with dual batteries. So if you wanted to take one of the batteries out, you can do that. Bosch even gives you a little pin a cover to cover the connectors on the bike for the battery. So really easy integration, and again I'll show you in a few moments how those batteries are removed. Okay, so now that I have the key, I can show you how the battery removal works for the Bosch power tube. So I can put the key in the lock here, and this is quite clever. I always have to remember the angle of the key is parallel with the down tube, so it makes it really easy to get it in there. I can open up the door here to get access to the battery. Now, on any other e-bike system, when you release the key, the battery is going to fall out. With the Bosch system, it's not. So I release that once, and you see it tipped forward, so now I can access it, but it's not going to fall out until I press this tab here. Once I press that button, now the battery will come all the way out, and of course I've got the carrying strap here to make it really easy to hang on to. So that's quite unique, because a lot of the other bike systems, you open the key and the battery flops out, and of course that's a little bit dangerous. So it's really nice having that two-step process where it's going to slide out enough to get part way out, and then press that button at the top right here to pull it all the way out. While I've got the battery out here, I should show there is a little button on the side here that you can use to check the charge status while it's off the bike. So you can see I've got 4 LEDs that light up there when I press that button. Again, there we go. And when you're charging, they'll also blink to show you the current charging status. And of course, that's where you plug it in to charge it up. With the optional dual battery, the Bosch system is actually designed to draw 5% from one battery, then switch to the other battery and draw another 5%, and it alternates back and forth. And it does that to prolong the lifespan of your battery. When a battery is continuously drained, that puts more stress on the cells, and that can shorten the lifespan of the battery. When it has a bit of a rest, that doesn't put as much strain on the cells, and it helps prolong the lifespan. So it's a really neat feature that Bosch incorporated. And to charge the batteries, you've got this really handy charging port here, really well secured. I like the fact that a lot of times there's a plug that comes out and then you can lose it. This is actually attached to the bike, so that cover is going to stay on there, which is great. Or you can also remove the batteries and bring them inside and charge them that way. If you charge it on the bike, it's going to charge both batteries. If you take them out, of course, you'd either need 2 chargers, the bike just comes with 1, or of course you can charge 1 battery at a time. So obviously, since we're using the Bosch batteries, we are using the Bosch system. We've got the Bosch Performance Line CX. That's Bosch's highest torque drive unit. Usually it's used on a mountain bike. I love the fact that for this year, Riesenmüller is using the Bosch CX on all of their bikes. With a mid-drive, you get the benefits of the weight being distributed more evenly centrally through the bike instead of in the rear hub like a rear hub motor would. It also means that when you change gears on a mid-drive, that is having a direct impact on the motor. So when you have a motor in the rear tire, it's simply turning the tire, and when you change gears, it has no impact on that motor. Because this is turning the belt, we've got a Gates carbon belt here instead of a chain, which is awesome. That means there's really no maintenance. You don't have to oil it or keep it clean or adjust it. It lasts typically 2 to 4 times longer than a chain, and it's really quiet too, which is awesome. So when you pedal and the motor helps you out, it's turning the chain, or in this case, the belt. And of course, that's how your bike is normally propelled, so it feels very natural. It also means that when you change gears, and here we have a Rohloff hub, so there's 14 gears inside that hub, but even if you had the touring version with a cassette chain and derailleur, when you change gears, that's directly impacting on the motor. So that's going to help you climb hills. Not only are you going to be able to climb hills because of you leveraging the mechanical advantage of your drivetrain, of your transmission really, the Bosch CX also has lots of torque. I think 75 Newton meters of torque, which is lots. And really, torque is what you're concerned about because that's what you need to know for climbing hills. Do you have enough torque to get you up there? Certainly with the Bosch CX you do. The CX drive also has a lot of responsivity, so as soon as you put some pressure on the pedals, you're going to get that assistance. So you can really stop in the middle of a steep hill and start again. You don't have to worry about getting some forward momentum before the motor starts assisting you, because it does start assisting you right away. The CX also allows you to spin at a higher RPM, which is nice. Some people like to spin faster, and the motor is going to keep up with you on that. And the CX also gives you the very cool EMTB mode. So coming up here to the Intuvia display, Bosch uses a couple different display options. This is in the Intuvia. I've got a protective film on it right now, so that's why it's a little bit harder to see. But with the Intuvia display, we can remove it, which is nice. That means you could put the Cobi on there. That's spelled C-O-B-I. You can check out a video review of it. That allows you to mount your smartphone up here and control your smartphone through the Bosch controls over here, which is really cool for safety reasons. You don't have to touch the screen. And it gives you navigation and fitness and all sorts of other great options. But even the Intuvia display, it's nice because you can see a lot of information on the screen at once. And with the Intuvia display, you can also charge your smartphone. So there is a USB port here that you can use for charging things. Of course, it's also removable for safety, but if you prefer, so not safety, security, sorry, you can take it with you, but if you prefer, you can put a screw through the bottom here and permanently mount it to your bike. So looking at the Intuvia display here, you can see the current battery level there, current speed, level of assistance right now is off. We've got the light turned on and trip computer down here, which is currently showing the clock. When you're riding, the Bosch system does have both shift detection and shift recommendation. So shift detection means that when you shift, it's going to momentarily cut power to the motor. You won't even notice it. It's really fast, but it does that to reduce wear on your drivetrain when you're shifting, because of course if you're shifting under a heavy load with the motor helping you out, that's going to wear things out sooner. So it's nice that Bosch does that. They're one of the few that actually has that. As well, while you're riding, if you start spinning too fast or too slow, the Bosch system actually is going to show an up or down arrow to suggest that you shift. Now, obviously you don't have to, but it's saying, you know, you're going to be more efficient and the bike's going to be more efficient if you go ahead and shift. So that's another really cool feature. So you can see right now the assistance is off. If I come over to my remote here, it means I can adjust the assistance without taking my hands off the bars, and I can press the plus. That'll move it up to Eco. Eco gives you 50% of your input power. And by that I mean the CX drive here is actually sensing your torque, that is how hard you're pedaling, your cadence, that is how quickly your legs are spinning, and the speed of the bike. There's a speed sensor back here. It's calculating those things 1,000 times per second, so it's essentially reading your mind. And when you put it on Eco, it's going to give you 50% of your input power. Most people tend to ride on Tour. That's going to give you 120%. But the really cool thing that I started coming up here to tell you about was when we go to Sport, you'll see it'll flash down here EMTB. That is a dynamic adaptive mode. That basically adjusts anywhere from Tour all the way up to Turbo, which we could adjust to manually if we want. If we want to climb the hill without working at it at all, go up to Turbo, gives you maximum power. But if you leave it in this Sport or this EMTB dynamic mode, when you see a hill and start pedaling hard, it senses that you're pedaling hard and moves you up into Turbo. When you get to the top of the hill and you ease off your pedaling, it senses that and moves you back down to Tour. So it's really adjusting for you, which is great, because if you're like me and you put it up to Turbo for the hill and then you forget when you get to the top and you keep cruising along in Turbo, you're going to use up your battery a little bit quicker than maybe you'd hoped. And so with that automatic mode, it's going to remember to adjust that for you. It's also great if you get onto trails and technical sections, because you don't have to worry about, oh, I've got a tricky hill, go to Turbo, oh wait a minute, now it's a tricky section that I need to slow down for, I need to move it down. You can just leave it and the bike will automatically adjust for you. So that's a pretty cool feature about the CX drive, and that is only available on the Bosch CX drive. With the trip computer down here, we can cycle through that either on the display if we've got it with us, say in a restaurant, by pressing the I key, or while you're on the bike by the I key over here. And so we've got a clock, we've got maximum speed, average speed, your trip time, that is how long the bike has been rolling for, the indication of which battery is currently in use and the amount of level in each battery, our range estimate, so that is dynamic based on both the capacity of both batteries, if you have a dual battery setup, and the current level of assistance that you're in, and it projects that forward by basing it on the last few kilometers that you went. So you can see with probably half a charge on my battery now, it's saying I can go 132 kilometers on Eco, 67 kilometers on Tour, 50 kilometers on Sport, and 41 kilometers on Turbo. And of course, as I ride, that's going to adjust, both based on what I've been riding and the remaining capacity of the battery. So that's really useful. And of course, we also have an odometer, which is the total distance on the bike, and the trip distance as well. And all of those can be reset at any time by pressing and holding the reset button. So that resets my trip distance. Of course, it won't reset the odometer. And we're back to the clock. So I've already mentioned that we have a Gates carbon fiber belt here, which is great because there's no maintenance and we don't have to oil it. And on the Supercharger GX Rohloff, obviously I've got the Rohloff hub here, but you can get this bike with the NuVinci CVT. So I'll show that to you now on another bike so you can see what the NuVinci system is like. And of course you could also get it with just a regular chain cassette derailleur. So here's the NuVinci hub. This is on the new Charger Mixty, but you can get it on the Supercharger GH NuVinci. And it's a continuously variable transmission, so we can shift while we're stopped and while you're riding. And it's a really easy system to use. If you take a look at the little cyclist there, when I twist this, you can see starting to go up a steeper hill. That makes it easier to pedal. And when I twist it the other way, it goes flatter. That makes it harder to pedal. Really intuitive. Going up a hill, make the little cyclist go up a hill. Going flat, make it flat. And that impacts on your cadence, making it easier or harder to pedal. You can shift while you're stopped, also while you're climbing, so if you've got a hill with a variable grade, you can just keep making that adjustments as you wish. Super intuitive, and again, it's completely sealed. Like the Rohloff system, there's no maintenance or adjustments that need to be made to it. So I love the Rohloff hub. It's incredibly robust, a really wide gear ratio, and it really is going to last forever. I should point out that on the Touring and the GH NuVinci version of the Supercharger, they do include a chain guard. On here we've got kind of a belt kind of protector that's going to keep it protected and safe, but you will maybe, if you've got really long pants or skirt or something, you may want to just keep an eye on that you don't get that caught in there. So I'm not sure why they didn't put a guard on there, but so far I haven't had any problems with that, but I do want to point that out. So with the Rohloff hub here, this is a 14 speed hub. So instead of having all of the gears on the outside like you do with a normal cassette, they've put everything inside. So that's really clever because that keeps it well protected. And that's why there's Rohloffs with well over 100,000 kilometers on them. They just last for forever. There's no adjustments. So on a regular chain cassette and derailleur, you know, sometimes the derailleur gets out of whack or the cable stretches and things don't shift well, or you hit it and it gets dirty and you have to clean it, and it's, you know, there's just a lot of challenges with it. Really, it doesn't make sense to put the drivetrain on the outside of the bike, your transmission, because that's where you're going to run into problems. So by sealing it inside this hub, it's well protected. The only maintenance required is an annual oil change. You can see there's a little bolt there you can remove, and you can change the oil. And other than that, you know, it's not going to go out of adjustment. It doesn't need any tuning. It just works all the time and super reliable. Like I said, well over 100,000 kilometers on it. We do have a quick release here, so if you do need to change your tire, easy to do. And we also have a horizontal adjustments here that we can make to adjust the tension on the belt. So it's really easy to make those adjustments as the belt stretches, just like a chain stretches over time. You can adjust the tension there. With the Rohloff hub, you can also shift while you're stopped. So you can come up here to the twist shifter. You can see the little bird indicates what gear we're in. Right now we're in 5. I can easily move that down to 1, just like that, and it's shifted. I don't have to be moving along. I can shift all the way through the entire gear ratio while we're stopped. So that's really great. A lot of times you may have to stop suddenly, or you're not really paying attention. You stop and you're in the wrong gear. With the Rohloff, you don't have to worry about that. You can shift while you're stopped, which is great. And of course, you can shift through the whole range as well, which I love, because a lot of times, you know, I'm kind of flying down a hill. I've got a steep hill coming up, and you do that kind of crazy thing where you're pedaling because you need to shift, but braking because you don't want to go any faster. You don't have to do that with the Rohloff. You can just wait until you get to where you need to and go ahead and shift. Now you will find that with the Rohloff, you do need to make sure that there isn't a heavy load on the pedals when you shift. If you're pedaling really hard and try to shift, it's not really going to shift. So the first time you ride a Rohloff, you kind of have to reteach yourself. If you're used to your body memory knows how to shift a chain and derailleur, you kind of have to develop a new one with the Rohloff. So the first time, stop pedaling and then shift, but it's instantaneous. It's really, really fast. So you don't actually have to stop pedaling for very long. And in fact, once you get good at the Rohloff, you'll realize that when your pedals are up and down, there's no torque on them. And so if you can actually learn that body memory so that as your pedals come up to the top where they're up and down, that's when you shift. You don't even have to stop shifting. And so it becomes pretty easy once you get used to it. But it does take a little bit of getting used to. Now, it's got a massive 520% gear ratio. So in effect, that means I very, very rarely use 1 and 2. It has to be a super, super steep hill, I'm talking 30% or more, before I really need to go that low. Similarly, I'm usually on flat cruising along in 11 or 12. It's very rare that I need to use 13 and 14 unless I'm going in excess of 50 kilometers an hour. So I can actually, in gear 14, I can go 65 kilometers an hour and still pedal, and my feet aren't spinning too fast. That's how wide the gear ratio is. So you can go really fast down hills by, on a normal bike, 50, 55, there's no point pedaling because you're going to be spinning too fast. With the Rohloff, you can keep pedaling. And conversely, when you get up to the lower gears, you can climb pretty much anything. Generally, I find that my wheel will start lifting off and I'll start falling over backwards before I can't shift into an easy enough gear to climb the hill. So the Rohloff system, really wide gear ratio, shift while you stop, and of course, it's beautiful because there's so little maintenance, especially when you combine that with the Gates belt here and the Rohloff hub. If you ride all year like I do, I ride in the rain and the snow, and I get home, and with a Rohloff and a belt, I don't have to do anything. Sure, I want to keep the bike clean to avoid, corrosion or things like that, but generally there's nothing I have to do to the drivetrain, whereas with the chain, cassette, and derailleur, I'm always having to clean it, always doing adjustments. So I really love the Rohloff. It is definitely more expensive. If you ride your bike a lot, it'll actually save you money in the long run. It'll pay for itself over time. Because if you go with the chain, cassette, and derailleur, typically every few thousand kilometers, you're replacing that. You're replacing the chain, you're replacing your cassette, you're replacing the derailleur. All those things add up because they wear, right? So after a number of years, if you add up how much you've spent on that, you could have paid for a Rohloff. So certainly if you plan on riding a lot, keeping your bike, don't want to do a lot of maintenance, don't want to have that ongoing cost of wear and tear on your drivetrain, the Rohloff with the Gates carbon belt is definitely a great way to go. So I mentioned this bike was really comfortable to ride. There's a number of great features that Riesenmüller has included with the bike to make it really comfortable. One of my favorite features is this integrated water bottle. So you can see it's mounted right near the handlebars, makes it really easy to grab. You're not reaching down under the frame, and all you do is lift up and it comes off. That's because there's 2 pegs here that hold it on and a couple of indentations in the bottle. And so I've never actually had one fall off, and I've ridden a lot of bikes with this. It's a fantastic system, really easy to use, and one of my favorite features about the bike. As far as comfort goes, we also have these really comfortable ergon grips with some bar ends here. It's the Ergon GP3. That's really great because not only does it help avoid pins and needles in your hand or tingling, especially on those longer rides, but it also gives you another riding position because you can kind of position your arms a little bit differently in your upper body, and that helps to reduce fatigue. So having those bar ends is really nice. Oh, I should mention, with the water bottle, there is actually room for a cage down here, so if you needed more than one water bottle for those longer rides, you can put a cage on there and put a regular water bottle in as well. With the GX Rohloff here, we are getting the Ergon SMC4L. It is a fairly comfortable saddle with a little bit of gel here, a bit of a cutout as well. But if you go with the GH New Vinci, then it comes with the Selle Royale Nuvola, and that has definitely a little bit wider of a saddle, a little bit more cushion, and in fact it also has a higher weight capacity. That's one of the things about the New Vinci GH, is that they've selected components on it that support a higher weight capacity than the other bikes. And if you go with the touring version, you're going to get the Selle Royale New Lookin', which also is a little bit more of a comfort-oriented saddle compared to the SMC4, which is more of a performance-oriented. The pedals, well, the pedals I would change, and I say that on almost every bike I review. Perhaps I'm particularly picky about pedals, although I know it's a very personal thing, and so a lot of times manufacturers aren't even including pedals anymore. So how about just forget about the pedals, pretend they're not included. You could certainly ride with them if you want, but for myself, I would change them to some platform pedals with pins. I'd like something a little bit wider, and it makes sense because everybody has personal preferences. Maybe you want to go with a clipless pedal or something like that, so I wouldn't worry too much about those. Now the handlebars and the stem here, on the GX Rohloff, you can see we've got a fairly flat stem. I think that's a 6-degree angle, and not a whole lot of rise and fairly wide bars. That gives you a little bit more of a forward performance-oriented riding position. If you go with the GT Touring or the GH New Vinci, then they're going to have a little bit of a narrower bars, more of a rise to get you into more of a upright riding position, and they changed the stem to a 20-degree stem, so it's quite a bit of a higher angle on that stem, and that's really going to bring you up and give you a even more upright and perhaps more comfortable riding positions. That's definitely a difference between them. They all come with the Thud Buster suspension seat post, and that's really going to help make this bike very comfortable. It as you go over bumps, it basically kind of moves back and forth. You can see it moving a little bit there to absorb some of those bumps without going up and down and changing the length of your pedal stroke when you're pedaling. So it's a really nice system. It's quite comfortable. It's certainly worth coming and trying it out. And one other item just to, give you more comfort, we do have these beautiful SKS fenders. They're really well attached. You can see we've got a couple of fender stays here, and it's attached to the fork up there. Same on the back, attached to the bottom, attached to the rack in a few places, and just really secure. They are plastic, but they're completely silent. They don't seem to rattle around at all, and they do give you full coverage, which is nice for riding in the rain or through muddy conditions. Speaking of rain and muddy conditions, with the Supercharger GX Rohloff, we actually get these Schwalbe Rock Razor tires on 40mm rims. And in fact, these are the same rims that they use on the Touring and the New Vinci GH. But with those models, you get the Supermoto X tire from Schwalbe, and it has a reflective sidewall, fairly smooth tread pattern, nice and wide, 2.4 inches. Really great for gravel, for pavement, for soft material, sand, loose gravel. Works really, really well. They upgrade to the Rock Razor and use these wider rims on the Supercharger GX Rohloff because these knobs are going to perform a lot better on mud and really wet conditions. So the Supermoto X tires on the other two models are great for everything except for deep mud. Because they don't have knobs, you really will start to lose traction. With the Supercharger GX, you can get through the mud no problem. When you're rolling along on the pavement, you're really riding on these smaller knobs, so they're fairly quiet, not a huge increase in rolling resistance. But once you start cornering, you get into mud, really loose conditions, then these wider knobs on the side come into play, and that's where you really get a lot of increase in traction. So that's a nice feature. That's designed with some degree of puncture resistance, and you can go tubeless. They're tubeless easy, so it's easy to set this up as tubeless, which means instead of using the tube that comes with it, by the way, the tube does have a removable valve core, which I love. I can take that core out, put some tire sealant into the tube. That way if I do get a puncture, it's going to seal it up right away before I lose any air. So that's a really cool feature. Or you could go tubeless, get rid of the tube entirely, put in some sealant, and avoid punctures that way as well. Speaking of safety, we've got these really cool reflectors right on the fork here, and we have lights built in, and they're running off of the main battery. I'm just going to turn the lights on now. You can control that from the Intuvia display here. Just press the light button. That's going to turn the lights on. See, it says lights on and a little indicator there. What I love about this IQXE light, not only is it super bright without blinding oncoming traffic, but it has these side cutouts here to make you safer at night. So that's a really nice feature as well. And we also have a light built into the back, and again, just little attention to detail that you'd expect from a bike that's built in Germany. We have the wiring running through the rack rather than under the fender or exposed to the elements, so that's a really cool attention to detail. And really that's one of the things that is kind of a hallmark of the Riesenmüller bikes, is the design is incredible. So the quality, because the bike's made in Germany, they've got incredible quality control, they're custom making each bike. The quality is incredible, but so is the design elements. So let me go back to this idea of it having a belt. They've actually used an elevated chainstay. And what I mean by that is if you look at your bike at home, the chain or the belt probably runs above and below the chainstay. When you need a new chain, they break the chain, put a new chain on, and you're good to go. But a belt, obviously you can't do that. So a manufacturer has two choices. They can make a break in the frame somewhere that you pass the belt through, or they can go with an elevated chainstay design. So this is where you can see that the belt, or if you had the touring version, the chain, is running completely below the chainstay. So there's no need for a brake. All you do is open up the quick release, drop the wheel, the belt comes right out, put a new belt on, put it back in. Really easy to do. That also, to me, really, I love the performance of this bike with the frame geometry the way it is. I really like this elevated chainstay. It's really fantastic. So I got a little sidetracked there. I'm supposed to be talking about safety, so let me talk about the brakes. On the GX Rohloff and the Touring, we get these Shimano Dior XT hydraulic disc brakes. Great brakes, lots of modulation, tool-free adjustment there to adjust the reach of the bars. Nice big 180 millimeter rotors on the front and the rear. If you go with the Supercharger GH New Vinci, because it's rated for a higher weight capacity, they changed the brakes to the Magura MT4s. And also, I guess this is both safety and comfort. Perhaps most people think of it as comfort instead of safety, but we do have a really nice Suntour Ion air fork. This is actually an e-bike specific fork, so it's nice and burly, designed for the additional weight that you would expect from an e-bike, but it also is designed to accommodate the way that an e-bike handles. It's different than a regular bike because of that extra weight and the torque, so they've tuned the fork specifically for an e-bike, which is really great. So we have some adjustments here on the lockout. You can have it fully open or closed or anywhere in between. We have some rebound adjustments on the bottom here. It is a through axle, so that means the only way your wheel is going to fall out is if you actually take the axle all the way through. So that gives it more stiffness, again, more safety. It's a really nice feature, and it is an air fork. So if we come over here, you can see under this cap here we've got a Schrader valve that allows you to adjust the air, and in fact the bike even comes with a shock pump, which is really great because a lot of them don't. So we have a ring over here that allows you to set the sag according to your weight, and you can adjust. You can put more weight in for a stiffer, firmer ride, or take some air out as well to soften it up. So that all makes it obviously a lot more comfortable because it's going to reduce the vibrations when you're riding. It's going to, absorb a lot of those bumps, and it's going to help reduce fatigue. It's also going to keep you safer because now you're not worried about getting thrown from your bike. If you go through a pothole or something like that, you can kind of just keep on going, and you're going to be able to be in better control of the bike. So I definitely recommend having a suspension fork from both a comfort and a safety point of view. And Riesenmüller has put some thought into the convenience of the bike as well. So we've got this really cool front rack here. This is only available on the Supercharger GX Rohloff. So the GH New Vinci and the GT Touring don't come with this front rack. It's designed for a fairly small load, that's 3 kilos, but they've intelligently located the light under the rack so it's not going to be blocked by whatever you put on there, a sleeping bag or something like that. And it's got a few different places that you can attach bungees to or to hold things on, so that's great. We also have the rear rack here. This one has a 20 kilo maximum load, and it comes with this really cool bungee cord. So in the past we often saw spring-loaded rattle traps that would rattle the whole time you rode. This is completely silent, and it is adjustable, so we can adjust the size of the bungee, and then it has a bit of elasticity, so it'll actually clamp on whatever you need to put up there. So that's pretty cool. We also have a kickstand. This is the Pleasure Edge. It's a very stable kickstand, and it's mounted on the rear stay here, bolted into the frame, nice and secure. Your pedals aren't going to collide with it. Keeps the bike upright, which is awesome. And we also have the Abus folding lock. So I love this. This is the newer design of the folding lock. You can see all I have to do is open up the lever, and now I can pull it out. So these are steel bars, hardened steel, coated in rubber to protect your frame. Unlike a U-lock though, which is also hardened steel, this folds up nice and small and has this really cool mounting point right here on the bike. It uses the same key that we use to remove the battery, so you only need one key for the bike, which is awesome. And unlike a U-lock, it's also really easy to get around your frame. So you can open it up, you can wrap it around your frame and then around whatever you're locking to very easily. So it's a nice option that they include with the bike to help keep it safe. So I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed. If there is, or if you have questions, you can head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. I'm going to take you on a ride test. It's an awesome bike, a lot of fun, beautiful to look at, really safe, comfortable, lots of convenience factors. And it's going to last a really long time. You know, that's one of the things that when you come and you look at it and you try it, it's just incredible how everything comes together to make such a great bike. And it's very sturdy, really well made. For any questions, head over to our website at citruscycles.ca. So you can't tell from the video, but I've got a big smile on my face. I really like the riding position of the SuperCharger GX Rohloff. Got fairly wide bars, really comfortable Ergon GP3 grips with the bar ends to give me different riding positions, which is great for longer rides. And in a way, that's a reflection of Riesenmüller's vision for the bike, is that you are going to be on longer rides with it, and so they make that, you know, those bar ends give you different riding positions, and you know, they really build the bike to last with the Gates carbon belt. There's no maintenance. The Rohloff, of course, also lasts forever. But I do really like the riding position. It's a nice mix between comfort, definitely with the grips, and the nice, comfortable riding position. But I don't feel that I'm too upright and don't have a lot of control over the bike. So if I do want to hit the trails, I feel like it's really capable of that, and I'll take you on some trails a little bit later in the ride test. Now, I've ridden Rohloff bikes for a while now. I love the Rohloff system. I'm really used to how to shift. It takes a little bit of getting used to, of course. You can shift under moderate load, but it's hard to shift under heavy load. So at first you kind of have to get in this habit of stopping pedaling and then shifting. But once you get good at it, you realize that you know, there's no torque on the pedals when they're in an up and down position. So that's the time that you can shift. So, you know, first few rides on a Rohloff bike, sometimes you just go along flat, just shift back and forth between different gears to get used to it. I'm trying to remember to talk more about the Rohloff later in the video. Right now, I just wanted to point out we're on some rough pavement here, lots of potholes, and some broken, you know, gravel up ahead. And so I'm going to focus on the suspension, the seat post, and the tires. As far as the suspension goes, this is a really nice air fork, and it's definitely doing a great job of absorbing a lot of those bumps and the potholes. The Thudbuster suspension seat post definitely helps. Obviously, it's not a full suspension, but at the same time, there's something fun about a hardtail as well. And even on a mountain bike, you know, some riders like to have a hardtail in addition to a full suspension. And so definitely there are some benefits, and the Thudbuster does help. You know, I'm going over some pretty rough terrain right now. The tires, the Rock Razor tires, this is exactly what they excel at. All this loose pavement here, kind of swerving around, trying to get the tire to slip. I really hammer on the pedals here, and I can't get either the front tire or the back tire to slip. They do a great job on these gravel roads. Of course, on pavement, they're great as well. They're not noisy at all. Unlike some knob tires, you know, people will hear you coming for a while. These are nice and quiet, smooth, not a lot of rolling resistance. It's the spring now, it's pretty dry here in Ladysmith, so I might not be able to find some mud to test them on, but on other bikes I've ridden with the Rock Razor tires, they do really well in mud. Those side knobs just dig right in and give you lots of traction, and that's important when it gets wet or muddy. So yeah, on the broken pavement, potholes, gravel, combination of the tires, the suspension and the suspension seat post really help not only smooth things out, but to keep you in good control. So I've got some steep hills coming up here. Won't be a problem with the roll-off. Like I said, I've been riding bikes with the roll-off for quite some time now, and I really do like it. Very reliable. Fantastic that you can shift while you're stopped. So earlier there on the ride I had to stop for some traffic, and I didn't downshift ahead of time because you don't have to. You can downshift while you're stopped, so that's really great. Right now the roll-off hub's new, of course, and so it's a little bit noisier than eventually it will be. Eventually they get a little bit quieter. The noise doesn't bother me. I find it quite pleasant. It's really only when you're coasting that you hear it, and different gears are louder than others. I find between 6 and 7 is a little bit louder than 7 and 8. So a hill like this, yeah, I'll go down into 3, but I certainly, yeah, that's too low. I certainly don't need to go down to 1 and 2. The gear ratio on a bike like this is incredible. You can climb incredibly steep hills. Between the combination of the Bosch CX drive, which has so much torque, and this really low gear, you can just climb up anything. You can also get going pretty fast. This hill up ahead, I'll show you, at that point we may actually use the 13th and 14th gear. Generally on flat I'm only in 11 or 12 because I don't need that much gear ratio on flat, but if you get going 50, 55, then you know, having that extra gears is handy. So I'm in 13 now, put into 14, fairly slow cadence, pedaling up to 50 kilometers an hour. There we go, over 50 now, and still able to contribute to the momentum of the bike because I'm not having to pedal that fast. So, as you would expect with the roll-off, huge gear ratio, climb up anything and cruise along pretty quickly as well. Of course, with a really stable bike like this, you know, cruising along at that 50-some kilometers an hour, you feel perfectly safe, confident and in control of the bike. I'll come back to you in a few minutes once we're on the cycling trail. Well, it's a beautiful day for testing bikes. Getting later into the spring, we've got the smell of the ocean, tide must be out. And this is just a great bike for this type of riding, just, you know, getting out and enjoying yourself, seeing the beautiful spring flowers. It's interesting because I'm finding it so quiet and smooth. I love having the Gates carbon belt, of course. From a maintenance perspective, for me, it's a no-brainer. If I can get a bike with the belt, totally going to do that. And in the past, that meant going with the New Vinci system, which is great, but just doesn't have the same gear ratio as the roll-off. And
You know, there's Rohloffs out there with, you know, 300,000 kilometers on it, so I know it's a really tried, tested solution. And with the Supercharger, I'm so excited that we can have the Rohloff and the belt combination now. So it's, you know, super quiet, super smooth, and I don't have to do anything to it. I don't have to clean and oil it, worry about it getting rusty or anything like that. It's just, it's great. It's a great combination. I'm riding in shorts today, so I haven't noticed any problems with the lack of guard for the belt, but it is something to keep in mind. You may need a pant clip or something like that if you have really long pants. That could get caught in there. Yeah, the Thudbuster's doing a good job. Obviously riding over curbs on a full suspension is going to be a little bit softer than on a hardtail like this with the Thudbuster. But of course I can always use my legs as my suspension if I need to. I'm really not noticing the front rack isn't really causing me any issues at all as far as confusing my mind or anything with having the rack there. Sometimes it can be a challenge, especially with racks that don't turn when you turn the handlebars, which of course does have its own advantages. But with this, it does make it easy to get used to. Do love having the integrated water bottle holder there with the cageless system. Works really well. Easy to grab, easy to put back on. You're not reaching under your bike. It's not in the way at all. So yeah, I really like that. Okay, heading on to the Stocking Creek Trail here. Try out the suspension fork and the tires on the gravel again. This bike just, you know, it's ideal for this kind of riding. Transitioning from pavement to trail and back is so smooth. Slam on the brakes here. Tracks really well. I was able to lock up the rear brake there, but still had a lot of grip. Do some swerving here, pedaling hard, you know, and not at all losing any traction at all. So for rail trails and things like that, this is great. Still feeling like it's a really comfortable riding position. You know, I can see the trail really well. I can see traffic when I'm riding on the roads. But the wider bars, I feel, gives me a fair bit of comfort, but also a good balance with control over the bike. So if I want to ride some more aggressive trails, I feel like it's going to be possible. And I'll do that in a few minutes. I'll take you on some mud and rock and routes. And it's just one of those bikes that invites you to ride more. When you own a bike like this, when you own a bike that you love, that's just so enjoyable to ride, you just look for the opportunities, the excuses perhaps, to get on and ride. It's interesting, I notice certain bikes kind of push me a little bit more, and this is one of those bikes that I'm probably riding at a higher average speed than I would on other bikes, just because it really invites that. It's really a lively bike. This is where, you know, the wider bars are appreciated because it gives you more leverage, more control over the bike. So if you're trying to get through some technical sections on a trail, this isn't too technical. You've got that control that you need. This is a really fun bike for stuff like this. It handles really well. Front suspension is just soaking up all of those roots and rocks and bumps. We do have a little bit of soft mud here in some of the corners, and not a problem with these rock racer tires digging in. I'm not sure if I'm missing my D-light. I usually ride a D-light with the full suspension off in the GX roll-off or the mountain roll-off, and you know, those are more comfortable. Buster's great, but it's not completely a full suspension. So I think I do notice, you know, the comfort difference and a little bit of handling difference with the full suspension. Both your wheels are always on the ground. So, but the hardtail has its advantages too. Certainly it feels light riding. It's not a particularly light bike, especially with the dual batteries, but when you're riding it, you don't notice the weight. It feels easy to kind of throw around on the trail. And the Cudbuster does definitely help. So really, if you have the opportunity to come and try the D-Light with the roll-off and the Charger with the roll-off, you can kind of decide for yourself if it's worth the investment in the full suspension. Here there's certain gear combinations in conjunction with that roll-off belt that are going to be certain gear combinations and speed combinations, I suppose, where it is going to be a little bit louder. Often that's an indication to me that I'm actually in the wrong gear. The Bosch system does have some shift recommendations that it'll make. But other than when you're climbing, and perhaps in a slightly less optimal gear, you don't hear a lot of noise from the system. Again, that transition from trail to road, seamless tires don't seem to have a whole lot of rolling resistance, so I am able to ride along at a fairly fast clip fairly easily, even with the strong winds I've got today. I do need to add a mirror. I usually ride with a mirror on all my bikes, and with these Ergon GP3s, even with the bar ends, you can take the plug out and add a mirror, so that's really handy. I plan on doing that. So I've got another steep long hill here. Just thought I'd show you again what we can do with the gearing ratio on the roll-off. So I was almost at 55 kilometers an hour there, and my cadence really wasn't too fast. I could probably have brought it to 60 maybe even 65 before my cadence would be too fast. It's one of the things that, you know, I'm so used to on other bikes, always riding on flat in my top gear. It took me a while to get used to the roll-off, realizing, yeah, you know, 11 and 12 is kind of top gear on flats. It's really only downhills that you're going to need to use that 13 and 14. The other interesting thing that I noticed on my ride today is a couple of times, because this is a ride I do fairly frequently, you know, I'm off, just closed up the bike shop Saturday afternoon, heading to Shemanis. Have to have some of that homemade gelato, and now you know my secret. A few times during the ride I said to myself, wow, I'm here already, like it's going by really fast. And that always happens on a bike that I really enjoy riding. Good hill to come down to do a comparison between a hardtail and like this Charger and the full suspension like the D-Lite. You definitely get more feedback on this bike. You can feel the road a little bit more, you can feel those bumps a little bit more. It's definitely very lively when you're going at high speeds on, you know, hills like that with some bumps. Whereas on the D-Lite with the full suspension, you just kind of float down the hill. It's a really interesting sensation. So, you know, I like them both. It's hard to choose. Obviously, I tend to ride the D-Lite more often than the Charger because I'm so used to having that real comfort. But there is something to be said about the hardtail as well. Every now and then you'll hear a little bit of a noise. That's the stones being picked up from the rock razor tires hitting the fenders. And it is nice to have the fenders for a touring bike, especially with the Gates carbon belt. This is a bike you could ride all year, not really have to worry about, you know, riding in the wet or snow because the belt just doesn't require any maintenance. This is a relatively steep hill, especially at the end here, and I'm in 2, and I probably could have stayed in 3. 1 is certainly not required. So definitely a great gear range on the Rohloff. So I've been riding a bit over an hour now, almost 30 kilometers, and my impression is that this is definitely a bike I could ride all day. Really enjoyable, really comfortable. The dual batteries, of course, would allow you to ride all day. And, you know, so reliable. The combination of the Rohloff, the Gates carbon belt, the Bosch system. I'm going to drop into a trail here, and it's good for me to mention, reminder to me to mention that you can also get the Supercharger Mountain. So it's the exact same frame. So this bike, the Supercharger GX Rohloff, is completely trail capable because it's the same frame they use on their Supercharger Mountain. With the Supercharger Mountain, of course, they go with wider, knobbier tires, don't have the fenders, since sometimes you wouldn't want that on a mountain bike, and you know, not the ergo grips or bar ends. Other than that, very, very similar. So that tells you, you know, you could certainly use this bike for mountain biking if you wanted to, or you could consider the Supercharger Mountain, which is, you know, has a lot of very similar characteristics to this bike. Handling really well in these corners, tires are doing great. Nice wide bars gives you lots of control in the tight corners like this. Saw a car out there, so gotta watch for pedestrians. Oh, there they are. Head back up. Put it on turbo, just for fun. And I always say with an e-bike, you have as much fun going uphill as you do down. Bosch has a great video called Uphill Flow. Got a few of them where they just show some of the fun things you can do climbing your way up the hills. So for the detailed specs of this bike, current pricing, to find our contact info in case there's anything that you need clarified or you want to set up an appointment to come try it. It's an awesome bike. Definitely top of my list. You can find all that info on our website at citruscycles.ca.